I have tried roughly starting this video 4 or 5 times, and both of the cats are now on the desk. Anyway, actually trying to start the video off, I wanted to talk about these 5 books because I have really been getting into dark academia books, mainly for like the setting and the vibes and the prose, admittedly kind of just the vibes, but the settings are just beautiful, and I've really been into like technically period pieces, but also like Victorian period pieces. If you've been here a little bit, you'll know that my favorite TV show is Penny Dreadful. Give me that, but in like book form, I am in love. And I just wanted to talk about some of my favorites so far. So first up, in no particular order, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. It basically takes place in this entire university that just studies like ghosts and the occult and hell, and the main characters getting like wrapped up in those machinations. Of course it's cool. And for Ninth House, I feel like it's the characters and the setting that really tie it all together for me, because as long as I'm having fun with the characters, I'm here for basically any plot. That being said, too, the plot for Ninth House is good. It's a fun, like, murder mystery. You're gonna want to take notes, though, because I felt dumb while reading it, but that might have been a me thing. There are a lot of tiny plot points that kind of slip by in the murder mystery aspect that the main characters, Alex, are trying to figure out. But there's a whole thing going on. It is intriguing, and it's even weaving in, like dead people and ghosts and more occult stuff. And even like cursed objects, and the entire setting is on this campus, which has this whole, not modern Victorian, but like old Victorian repurposed in modern day dorm houses. And Darlington's house, I don't know why, but it's the architecture that makes it, that really pulls me in, that really makes it like a dark academia one for me. If the architecture is kind of like there, I'm there. And that house specifically even comes more into play in the sequel, Hellbent. I don't know why I'm just into the house. I'm into a really like decrepit house. That's also foreshadowing for another book on this list. I will also mention there is a bit of a trigger warning in regards to S.A. The main character, Alex, she starts off not in a great place, and she wants to like drag herself out of that bad place. And the story lets her like progress and heal, but there are flashbacks. Now, following the vein of like literal schools is A Study in Drowning by Reid. That one is probably my favorite on this list, and it's getting a sequel in like July or August. I am so excited. But in A Study in Drowning, we follow Effie, where she's struggling to be taken seriously in her whole academic world and her whole university and campus. Also kind of by her own family. They're not great people. And she's given this opportunity to save the estate and literal house of her favorite author. So she leaves school, but it's still like an academic trip. Also escaping a not quite appropriate relationship sequence with the teacher. Also trigger warnings about grooming. I swear not all of these stories have trigger warnings like that. I was pulled in mostly by like the prose and the setting descriptions. Again, like I said, give me a decrepit house, and this house is my favorite because this entire estate is just crumbling under its own weight and mold and like falling into the literal ocean. Also set up some like spooky, fake, creepy stuff off in the shadows, off in the background. That's just a bonus. The plot is great too, because she's unraveling this like secret history of the author and some not so great stuff that he's been involved in the past. But yeah, it's fun, it's intriguing, the setting is so dramatic, the face stuff is cool and creepy. Study in Drowning is a great ride. So the next one, it's less fantasy, whimsical Victorian stuff, but more Victorian actually. The Victorian Gothic side with Corpse Queen by Heather Hermann. I will admit, over that title, I might stutter a little bit. But in that one, we have Molly Green also being tangled up in a murder mystery plot when her best friend like mysteriously ends up dead, and this mysterious aunt, Molly Green is an orphan, this mysterious aunt all of a sudden wants to like adopt her for reasons, and Molly goes, she's like 16, 17, she's a young adult, she goes to figure out the deal with the aunt and everything. She's also kind of coming to realize that sure, she can stay here and like be adopted, but she's also gotta like work for it, which includes grave robbing. And along with the grave robbing, which she kind of gets used to, it's kind of just part of the job, she also insists on learning medical knowledge with all the guys. Of course, it's the Victorian era, she's got to prove herself, so a lot of the guys don't take her seriously. That is kind of like a common theme, at least especially through Study in Drowning and Corpse Queen. Ninth House Alex does hold her own in that regard. Effie and Molly really need to fight for their place. But yeah, with Corpse Queen, there's grave robbing, there's the Victorian Gothic eras, the prose is great there, the setting descriptions are just pretty. The plot is intriguing with the murder mystery and everything, how that's tied into like the medical field that she's also trying to like tease out, and it's just dripping with the Gothic Victorian vibes. I don't know if there's going to be a sequel to Corpse Queen. Most everything was wrapped up, but there was like an element that was left open, so there's a maybe, but I don't know. I kind of hope so. Switching back over to the occult stuff for a little while, one of the latest classics that I read is also on this list, The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. It's a classic ghost story of a woman named Nellie being drawn into Hill House while she helps out a professor kind of like study the hauntings here. It's like a well-known haunted place, and the professor wants to like figure it out. He wants to study all of it, and Nellie can kind of help with that. Thing is, the house doesn't really want her to like leave. And since I've been kind of mentioning and focusing the prose and like the setting descriptions on in like each story so far, the prose is just as good, but you can tell it's definitely written back in like the 1950s. It's a little denser, it's a little more tangled, but I think that's intentional. That is definitely intentional given how the story is told, just in Nellie's head and how the house is like corrupting her. And I will admit there are a couple of moments that do take me out of the spooks, not in regards to the prose or anything, but I think the dialogue and some character dynamics going on. I'll say mainly between the professor and his wife and a certain friend that she brings over. That wasn't scary. That pulled me out of it a little bit, but coming back to the spooks and everything with Nellie, this definitely becomes one of my favorite classics, right up there with Frankenstein. And I'll admit, in the 1950s, I don't think they had like a dark academia genre, but I think this one, I just want to solidify this one in my mind because they're there to study the hauntings of the house, and things do not go great. And lastly, on my little list here of like the top 5 ones that I've enjoyed, feels not like a cop-out, but it does feel a bit like recency bias because I just finished the sequel of it. I finished The Tropic of Serpents. But in this list, I've got The Natural History of Dragons by Brennan. And I've heard that like light academia is a thing, right? I've mostly heard that in regards to like house aesthetics and decor and things, but I feel like a Natural History of Dragons would fit better in like light academia. We've got that Regency and Victorian era again with our main character, Isabella, who wants to break out of her role that society is always like shoving her in, just being a woman. Again, like I said, that's a theme through most of these. But Isabella specifically wants to study and go on expeditions around the world to study literal dragons. That's kind of where like the dark bit comes in, okay? She wants to study dragons. And that's just cool. It may not be like gothic and spooky, but just studying dragons as like a natural phenomenon of this world, just like lions and rhinoceroses and elephants, it's just neat. So yeah, those are my 5 favorites at the moment, and I would honestly love recommendations of more books kind of like this in this vein. I think that's why I made this whole video. I just want to read more like this. Preferably with some like horror spooky vibes, but it's not mandatory. Also, I was thinking of like an honorary mention while I was making this list. I kind of feel like Black Butler by Yana Tobaso would kind of fit. Wouldn't it? I mean, it's not so much on the academic side of things, it is more just like Gothic Victorian, but every now and then, they're doing research, it feels more like the academic side of things, depending on what like arc you're in. But I feel like it fits the vibe, most of the time. I do want to get back into that series. I think maybe after the Zelda ones that I've read, I'll get back into that one. But anyway, feel free to like and subscribe, and next week, like I said, I just finished up Tropic of Serpents by Brennan. I need to slow down when I talk, I am aware. I'll be chatting about that one. So yeah, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye!